What am I doing for Pride Month? Well, I thought it would be fitting to kind of zig where the culture zags, to push back against the madness. And so I'm celebrating not Pride Month, but Shame Month. Now, before you get too angry at me, let me point out that Shame Month is the month that I have set aside to remember my own shame, to contemplate the reality and the breadth and the scope and the ugliness of my own sin. That, of course, doesn't undo anybody else's sin, just like pretending to be proud of one's sin doesn't make it any less sinful. But I thought, better than yelling at the people who are claiming to be proud, who shouldn't be, you need to not be proud. I need to remember that I need to not be proud. I get, to some degree, that perspective of those culturally on the left who want to insist that everybody be accepted just the way they are, and that there's nothing wrong with sexual perversion, etc. I get it in this sense. It's very easy for any of us to look down our noses at what we perceive to be the sins of others and to treat those people as if they were other. For those on the left, it might be just people like me. People look down their noses at people like me because I believe homosexual behavior is sinful and an affront against the living God. And that makes me this terrible, awful ogre of a pseudo-Nazi character. Well, I actually do think that homosexual behavior is an affront to God, and it's wicked and awful. I also think that without flattening out all sins, I don't want to do that, and because the Bible doesn't do that. We think it does, but it doesn't. Not all sins are equally heinous. Nevertheless, all sinners are sinners. The problem from some in the Christian realm is when we look at these kinds of sins, the sins of sexual perversion, as if they are a whole other category that is somehow beyond us. That because we're in ourselves so much better than those people, we could never embrace that particular sin. Hogwash. You know, there's an expression that I think is quite useful. It says, "There but for the grace of God go I." What does that mean? Well, what that means is I have to recognize that when I see somebody either in hardship or whether they're dealing with succumbing to a particular sin, I have to recognize that the difference between me and them is not that I have in myself superior moral qualities to that person, but rather the distinction is by God's grace. It's God's restraining hand. My father used to do this exercise where he would be teaching in ethics, and he would ask the students to list the most evil people in history. And it turned out that the list always included Hitler and Stalin and Nero and several others. And what he explained to the students was, look, do you notice something about this list? Every single one of them is a world leader who had absolute power in his own country. Is it not necessarily, how do I put this? It's likely not so much that evil people rise to power, but rather power, as Lord Acton put it, corrupts. That if someone as sweet and gentle as me were given all the power and authority that Hitler had, I might do all the terrible things that he did. And the same is true of all of us. So, Let's all of us acknowledge our dependence upon His grace. Let's all of us acknowledge that the only thing keeping us from this sin or that sin is God's hand of restraint. Let's celebrate Shame Month.